King, and Queens, what's going on with you today? Prepare to Compete podcast, Veterans Day edition. Kenneth Davis, how you feeling today, my brother?
Man, feeling blessed and highly favored, man. Feeling great, bro. Feeling great, man. Appreciate it.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, really excited to get into the show today. But before we get into it, man, again, it's Veterans Day. You happen to be a veteran. I'd like to tell you thank you for your service and your contributions in the U.S. Navy on that yacht, doing what you had to do, man. We definitely really appreciate you all them years and those deployments being away from your family. I know it was hard and all of that. So, definitely thank you for your service.
Man, most definitely, most definitely. I really appreciate that. And I just want to go ahead and extend that thank you out to all service members in the armed forces, man. We definitely appreciate all that you guys do. Army, Navy, Coast Guard, Space Force, Air Force, National Guard, everyone, man. We really appreciate everything that you guys do because we understand that it's a major sacrifice that you're actually making for us and our families. And truly, we definitely extend your thank yous.
Yeah, yeah. That actually brings a question to me, man. Do you have any times that you remember, especially while you're in the service and Veterans Day? Did they actually have any special programming and stuff when you were in there for veterans? I guess you're not classified as a veteran yet, but I don't know if they had any special celebrations.
Well, anytime that we had any time of a transition of a holiday or a Veterans Day or something like that, usually typically out on deployment, which I spent a lot of time out. That you had a special meal, so you'll be able to get, instead of the normal fixings they would make, that you may get a steak and some halibut or
Okay.
some lobster. But don't get too excited because that's always followed by some probably some bad news.
Okay, got it. Yeah, but yeah, they tried to do it up a little bit, so that
Yeah,
definitely works. Okay, for sure. So
yeah.
yeah, I mean, do you remember any special times or moments you'd like to share when you were in service?
Man, I had a lot of special times in service, but to be very honest with you, trying to identify one occasion, it'd be very hard. But one thing I can identify is some of the, brothers and sisters in arms that I served with. Those were the best moments, some of the best moments of my life of spending that time with some of those guys and girls, and really, being put in position to be by great people. So that was amazing. That was an amazing time for me.
Absolutely, man. That's tremendous, and I definitely enjoy helping veterans now use their VA loan to purchase homes. I know you with Veteran for Veterans have a whole company dedicated to that, which is tremendous and amazing, man. That the fact that you've actually dedicated your career to helping and serving veterans, man, that's really great. And actually, what made you want to get into that veteran service part of things?
Man, to be very honest with you, we tend to forget the veteran community is an underserved community, just due to the fact, we may think that, a lot of service members who transition out may have a decent establishment of lives, but unfortunately, a lot of veterans are underserved. So, by being able to identify that and to work for the public service to put my foot first in the community. I just really wanted to help others, and that was the best way I knew how. As I'm a veteran myself, is to be able to spread the knowledge, the love, and the information and awareness out.
Absolutely, absolutely. So definitely, man, all the veterans out there, thank everyone for their service. If you're looking to increase your service connected disability benefits, definitely reach out to Mr. Davis here. The website below, veterans for veterans website, vets for vets consultant.com. Also follow him on Instagram as well, which is right below. So yeah, man, we're gonna get right into it, man. We have an exciting show. Of course, some very good news going into 2023 for some veterans, but also just trying to get everybody really connected and try to get some type of understanding about this real estate market, man, because it is crazy And, we have a lot of misinformation out here. We definitely want our veterans to know, but also just the general population, because with real estate, a lot of the stuff overlaps, whether you use your VA loan or whether you're using a traditional loan. A lot of this information is going to apply to everyone. So for the real estate topics, we're going to be talking about rent versus buy and really breaking that down for a second. And also just covering the interest rates, man, and really looking at that over the history of time. And then also just answering that question that everyone has right now. Is it a good time to buy? So we'll break that down and give you guys some perspective and understanding of that today. Um, Mr. Davis, how is the real estate market going in San Diego right now?
You know what? I was going to ask you the same question because the real estate guru, Mr. Invest Now, LVA, the real estate market is always going to be a market here in San Diego, but it's one of those situations where it's trending back a bit, but it's just due to scarcity, right? Not necessarily. It's not necessarily there's not homes to buy. It's more or less the fear that's indicated here because of the market, right? Interest rates, rent versus buy, which one is cheaper, which one is more expensive, what you're going to get out of this, what you're going to get out of that. But we're here to inform you. One great thing I think Mr. Kayvon Jones here is really going to break it down here in the next second to go ahead and make that determination for you. But here in San Diego, it's always a time to buy. So with that being said, it's all about where you get in and the prices you get in. Okay.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. So, yeah, we're going to get into that and definitely educate you guys on the pricing and how to be strategic about everything, whether it's San Diego or Vegas. I know here in Vegas, it's been a massive increase in inventory, almost 10,000 homes on the market. So typically, to give you some comparison, it was usually about 2,000 homes on the market, and even less than that in some of the height of the 2020 and 2021 COVID madness. So, yeah, we definitely a lot to choose from, to say the least. But we kind of look at that as maybe an unhealthy market, but that's really kind of normal of what it should be. But we haven't really ever been in a normal market in a long time. So we just got used to that scarcity where now everything is back to normal, quote unquote. And we got some fear going on. So we definitely want to educate you guys on the market and just really making some comparisons. Okay.
So before we get into the rent versus buy, I did want to go ahead and ask a quick questions. With election season coming up, I've been seeing, some fearfulness in determining who's going to be elected or whatnot. I wanted to know was there, based on your opinion and your expert opinion, I did want to know, would now be a time to be fearful to purchase or not before we really get into the numbers?
Absolutely. Well, I don't really want to touch this political stuff just too much, right? But no, that's a very good question. For sure, whether it's going to be a Democrat or a Republican, the market tends to do different things, right? Especially. So we had some of the elections already that just have taken place, and who's going to control the House and the Senate. I feel like the market does the best when there are some checks and balances. So when all three aren't Republican or Democrat, it's going to be some checks and balances there. So with some Republicans actually taking some seats, having a little bit more control, that actually may help us. So then on top of that, if we do end up trending towards a Republican president, that could potentially help the stock market even more as well. So which will result in helping interest rates and helping the housing market. So you already kind of see if you follow the stock market that since we got some extra Republicans in there, stock market went up like 700%. I said 700 points on Thursday, right after that election. So then if we get a Republican president in there, it might go up even more. But whether it's a Democrat or a Republican that's currently in the seat, typically they start trying to do the right things during election season, whoever's in there, to try to win the vote. So I feel like over the next year and a half, is going to be really beneficial. You start seeing gas prices going down, and they're going to
Mm,
do what they can to help inflation and that sort of thing, just for Biden to try to get reelected. And then on the long term side of it, if a Republican gets in office, it's typically better sign for the economy, I would say.
okay, okay. So I know you don't want to teeter either which way, but it sounds like it's a good time to purchase and in all aspects. Even definitely with a split party possibly being present, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Because, we're already starting to get some of those checks and balances in there. So let's say, the Democratic president still stays in there. Well,
Hmm.
then you have some Republicans in the House and the Senate that can kind of help with checks and balances. So we're already seeing the benefit of that. So literally, it's already getting better than it was like a
Yeah.
month ago, and it should probably and only get better no matter what happens. Right. So we're looking at a lot of positivity with inflation going down, and that's going to help drive down the interest rates and get us back into some sense of normal as far as the rates, and hopefully start teetering back down to the 4.5 to 5.5 range
Hmm.
so that people could afford some housing. But also, these sellers are going to have to start being a little bit more realistic in their pricing based on the interest rates, which it's slowly happening in Vegas. But it's like if people aren't willing to go down on their price, almost 15 or 20%, they either got to take it off the market or get more realistic. You know what they say, shit to get off the pot. Like that's kind of where we at right now with the real estate market. And unfortunately for sellers, they can't be as greedy as they were able to be, over the last couple years.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I think all buyers and sellers are kind of subject to what the market is doing. So at the end of the day, I feel like as a loan officer, it's troubled waters, but there should be some calmness on the horizon. Definitely with sellers and buyers having to come to a reasonable decrease in sales price. So.
Absolutely, yeah, and that's going to open it up for first-time home buyers. I feel like right now, and that's why we're going into that rent versus buy, is that it's a phenomenal time to be a first-time home buyer, and especially if you really want to get into real estate investing, which I know a lot of people we talk to are our age or are younger, and they're really trying to build a portfolio of real estate, right? And you may be able to do that using a house hacking strategy, which I have a video pinned down below. You can check that out, and we're going to be able to learn more about that. But like, this is the time for first time home buyers to really get in the market. And let's say the market goes down further, or you can buy another property in a year and a day. So you really have a lot of good options. Okay. So you really just want to make sure that your mortgage payment is right around the same amount that you could rent that property out for. So if you're buying a $300,000 property and you're paying about $2,200 a month for your mortgage, can you in turn rent that property out for $2,200 or somewhere around that range, or hopefully even get a little bit more of a profit if you were to rent that property out? If you can do that, then you playing with house money with buying that property, because if the actual pricing goes lower, the rent never goes lower. So you'll be in a really phenomenal situation to rent that property out and buy another one, and then another one, and then another one, and just keep that
Another
property going.
one.
Absolutely.
I like to hear it, man. Hey, I really like to hear it. And so it sounds like what you're saying, man. It's all about pricing, right? It's all about where you get in the price, right?
Absolutely.
Uh,
All about getting into the price, man. So some people think about selling the property, but of course, your sales price is important, but even more important is where you buy in. So
mm,
definitely try to get in as soon as possible. So let's start breaking down. Let's start breaking down this rent versus buy. So I have this illustration here, pretty simple, man. It goes over if you were to rent for the next 5 years and you're paying $2,000 a month, you could do the math. 2,000 times 60 is what? $120,000. That's what it is
Mm.
that you've spent on renting a property. Ken, when the last time you rented a property, man? I know you've been a homeowner
Uh,
for a while. Can't even remember, it's
man,
been that long.
I can't tell you, brother. You know, it's I can't hustle backwards. You know how my motto, man. I gotta, if I am renting, I probably bought two, so it's gonna be very tough. But I mean, yeah, I think it was about 14, somewhere around
Right,
there. Yeah.
exactly. Yeah, yeah. As soon as you got in a position to purchase a
Hmm.
property, it seemed like you did so. You're able to utilize your VA loan, and had a pretty simple process with that, right?
Most definitely. I think it was more or less utilizing the loan products, but it was also the education that I was privy to, and being had to educate myself in regards to real estate. So and I can attribute a lot of that education to yourself, man. When you bought your first property, I had to dive into the books to see what was going on there.
Absolutely, man. Yeah. Hey, once your circle start buying real estate and advancing, you either gonna do the same thing or get left behind, right? So you're able to keep elevating, and now you elevate me, man. We just keep climbing and climbing and growing. So that's a wonderful thing. But now you looking at this and saying 120,000. That's for 5 years. I mean, some people have been renting properties their whole life, and they're older now, and of course, the rental values have changed. But just imagine how much money is that you're giving away. Like literally, you paid the landlord's whole entire property off. I'm sure they very much so thank you for that, right? Because after 10 years or so, that property is paid off based on what you paid for it.
Mhm.
So now if we're looking at the buy side of it, now I'm going to be real with you. As you can see, that mortgage payment is a little bit higher for that property. Why? Because the interest rate right now and so forth, right? So there's some different nuances to kind of try to get a lower rate, but on the average, that's probably based on a rate, a payment that you're going to be looking at for around a $300,000 house. Okay, so a little bit over $2,200. And that's going to be your principal, interest, tax, and insurance. So not really including the HOA in there, because that's going to vary based on the property. But just trying to give you guys a general consensus of really what to look at. Okay, because when you're buying a property, all that money is going into paying down the principal balance, right? Because you're doing that. And also, you have some tax incentives of buying property. Some people actually
Mm.
buy real estate and especially investment properties for the tax benefit alone. So, the tax benefit of buying a $300,000 property here in Las Vegas area, estimate again, and do your own research and talk to your own financial advisors, but it's going to be right around $19,000. And with a modest appreciation, I believe that we have on here, which is pretty standard for the Las Vegas area, you'll make about $82,000 in equity appreciation over that 5 year period. So we're talking about
Mm.
going to throwing away and burning 120,000 to making 82,000 within that 5 year period. So imagine being able to do that and have that 82,000 where you could improve that property. Maybe you got space in the backyard to add a pool. Maybe you want to do some upgrades. Maybe you're looking at starting a business and you want to take out the equity in a home equity line of credit to fund your business or to pay off debt. You have so many different options that because you chose to buy a house today, 5 years from now, you'll have all of these different options, and you're looking at that appreciation growth.
That's amazing, man. So let me ask you a question. So this is kind of based on the last 5 years or so.
Right, yeah, it's based on the last 5 years, but it's really just projecting out for the next 5 years. Because
Oh, okay.
if we'd have based it over the last 5 years, that number would probably be 182
Yeah, I
thousand
was
in
gonna ask. I was
appreciation.
gonna ask
Yeah,
because I know the market went kind of crazy for the last 2 years or so. So that's why I was gonna ask. Uh,
absolutely. So no, that's a good question. So based the appreciation numbers that we use to run these type of charts is based on the average appreciation.
mm,
Maybe anywhere between 5 and 10%, depending on the area of Las Vegas, is going to be the average appreciation per year, right? So if you're
yeah.
even thinking about like just 5% of the $300,000 home, that's about 15,000 just per year. You're timesing that by five, and that's getting you that appreciation over that 5 year period. So again, it's going to be anywhere between 5 to 10%. We use some averages there and got you to that 82 thousand number there.
And to be honest with you, that 5% seems fairly modest. So that's pretty, that's pretty good. It sounds like a win-win to me. But as a real estate professional, I did want to kind of, I guess, direct a question. For some that may be in a distressed situation, such as may not have the I guess the income, well, not necessarily the income, but doesn't have they we don't have enough money for the down payment or the PMI or closing costs or different things of that nature. Are there any programs you know of in the Vegas Valley that can assist with that?
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the most popular programs that's here in Las Vegas, which they have some versions in some other areas as well, is Home is Possible. Now they did kind of deplete their funding for 2022, but they should be revamping for 2023 and beyond. And they're
Mm,
able to give you some down payment and closing costs. They have several different programs. They have first time home buyer programs. They have programs if you're thinking about just upgrading the home and purchasing a new home. And they actually have programs for teachers, and they have special programs for
wow.
veterans as well. So, and with the teachers and veterans, they actually offer below market interest rates. So you have some different incentives there. So that's a very good program. They have a program with NACA. That's a pretty popular program where they pretty much run the gamut and do everything for you. They help you get your credit repaired and walk you through the whole process. And once you're ready, they actually fund the loan for you. So they're their own bank, right? So they're getting you prepared to actually get the loan from them, which is an amazing option as well. Then of course you look at sources like Navy Federal. They have programs for veterans as well as they have programs for people that are family and friends connected to veterans that may have Navy Federal accounts as well. And then if you're not in line with any of those programs yet, right, that you have Home Paths of America, which is more like a rent to own situation. And you could actually pick out the house that you want to live in. And while you get all your credit and all your income documents and stuff in order, instead of just wasting 120,000 over the next 5 years, they'll actually let you live in that home in a rent to own situation for the next 5 years, locking in the price of today of that home, doing that now. And then once you're able to qualify for the loan, you buy it out traditionally from them. So phenomenal options for you, man. I do a full consultation with all of my clients, and I go over all of these different programs and some other little tips and tricks that I have for you to get qualified for a home. So it's literally, if you want to own a home, there's no reason to still be on that rent side of this equation here. There's some steps to get you to that other side.
So it sounds like there's no excuses need to be made, right? That's
Hey, it
what it
ain't
sounds
no excuse unless you just want to rent. And I got a couple properties that actually for you if you want to do that.
like.
Go ahead. If you go rent in Vegas, rent from me. You know,
There we go. And he gonna get you in the right rental property. There we go.
absolutely,
There
absolutely. We
we
got something coming up right now for you.
go. No, that's ideal, man. That's great information, though, man. It sounds like just so many different programs for out there for anyone that is maybe in obviously and not necessarily a financial dire need or financial distress, but who's just trying to get over the hump to be able to have own home ownership. Because at the end of the day, we want to be able to provide security to our families, and home ownership is one of those reasons, one of those things that will be able to provide some of that there. So.
Absolutely. All right, so we broke down the rent versus buy. Now I want to clear up the interest rate conversation because every time I go to an event and somebody's talking about buying a home, they're like, "Oh, the interest rates is too high." It's like you listening to those news clips and you're not really looking at the full information. So this
Hmm.
sheet here just breaks down mortgage rates by the decade. Now, for the prices here, it's talking about a $400,000 home. Obviously, we know in the 1970s, unless you was a rich and famous singer or somebody, you probably didn't have a house that cost 400,000. We get that, but we're just trying to use it for comparison's sake, and we're mainly just looking at the average interest rate. Okay, so we're looking at the decades. You can see in the 70s it was almost a 9% interest rate, 80s over 12%, and then 90s around 8%. And in the 2000s, it was roughly where currently is now, right? In the around the 6.5% range. And of course, as of right now, as far as November of 2022, is kind of creeping up into the sevens, but we have a lot of different options to combat that. Okay, so the sellers are actually willing to offer closing costs, which a lot of buyers are using that towards buying down their interest rate. So you're able to do that, and maybe Mr. Davis share some different things and nuances about that. But then also, what you have to think is you just are not going to pay the same price for a home that you would a year ago. And we'll go into details about that. So, $400,000 home right now at that interest rate, you'll be looking at paying about $3,000 a month. Okay. So now if you could afford that, buy a $400,000 home. But if you can't afford that payment, buy a $300,000 home. We just illustrated that in the last one on what that $300,000 home will cost, right? So instead of just saying you're not going to buy a property, just buy a less expensive property. You don't necessarily need to buy a mansion, especially if it's your first property and you're a first time home buyer. Don't worry about hitting that a home run. Maybe you just need to change around some of your requirements. Maybe you change around the area that you were desiring to live so that you could have a little bit more affordability. Or maybe instead of a single family home, you switch to a townhouse or even a condo. Still a lot of options for you to still get in the game and buy a property. But again, as you can see, historically, the interest rates aren't that bad.
They're not too far off. They're not too far off. And I try to use a chart like this to illustrate to any of my clients when we're talking about interest rates. We're very kind of honed into where we are because well, obviously it affects them. However, affects them through that present day. But you have to kind of look at things historically, just like as you would even if you're looking at any market, right? The interest rate market is the same thing. Okay, historic numbers matter. So when we're talking about interest rates here at a $400,000 property, it's also we have to think regional as well, right? So when we're talking about in the region of San Diego, even if you're trying to scale back beyond that, it's going to be very difficult for you to find a property of desirability. Okay, but sometimes it's not always about desirability. All right, because at the end of the day, a lot of first-time home buyers, you guys need to get into a property. That is the barrier to again, and I'm not going to say the only barrier to financial success, but also I'm just saying the barrier to home ownership. Okay, so by being able to reduce your desirability, some of your wants and desires, let's go based on needs. Okay, because you need to not pay 100% interest. All right, you need to be able to come home and once you sell your property, have something that you're going home with. Okay, but again, it all depends on one, your needs and your needs of your family. So when we're talking about interest rate, I don't want it to be a prolonged objection because interest rates fluctuate every single day. Every single day. So you can sit here and try to wait for the best interest rate and never get into the property that you desire, because you're going to be still waiting 20 years now. Because a lot of times, many first-time home buyers are not in a financial position to stay in the same position to purchase a home the next 5 years from now. Because again, life happens. Life happens. So do not remove yourself from home ownership based on the interest rate. Worst case scenario, you refinance. You refinance, uh, get into a lower interest rate, and now you can be able to put yourself in a position to possibly pay a lower mortgage because your interest rate have been reduced. All right. So do not push yourself out home ownership based on interest rates. There's always strategies to be able to lower your interest rate by buying down rates, by having a considerable closing costs added to buy down interest rates, or a loan officer or a realtor being able to contribute to buy down your interest. There's so many different strategies that you can apply. Do not let this market of interest rates scare you to remove you out of the position of home ownership.
Absolutely. Don't let nobody trick you out these streets of home ownership. And that's for sure. So, and it really flows in nicely of what you said, man, right into the last kind of real estate topic we have for you guys today. Is now a good time to buy? Did you miss out?
Mm,
Mr. Davis is telling you you did not miss out. And this, I really want to break it down because, again, buying real estate is something that, it's a American dream, right? It's definitely an American dream, and it's one of the biggest single purchases we're gonna make. We have to really approach this with a lot of understanding and education. And so let's compare 2022 to now. Compare, I'm sorry, 2021 to 2022, right? So let's compare the timing of what it looked like. So let's say last year in 2021, you're trying to buy a $300,000 home. Now, as we know, homes were going crazy. If it was listed for 300, I don't care what major market you were in, you wasn't about to pay 300,000 for that. It was going to have 5, 10, 20 offers on that property being listed in the hour. Literally people were offering on homes without even seeing them. Like if your realtor didn't work, if you was a realtor and you didn't work full time and you couldn't show the person the house the minute they wanted to see it, they was probably firing you because they needed to get to
hold on.
that house quick. And that's how the offers was going, right? So we looking at the pro and cons, right? So yeah, before we had some lower interest rates, and really that was the only pro that you really had there. You had a lot more cons because, as I'm describing, it was crazy competition. People were overpaying way above the appraised value.
Mm,
Now think about that, right? When you paying above appraised value, that means it's worth this amount and you paying more than it's worth. It's like, how many times are you going to pay more than something's worth? Like, it's like I'm going, like, if you ever been to a restaurant and it's like, well, technically the steak only costs $20 for this meal, but since everybody want to order it today, we charging $70. You want to pay it or not? It's like, that's kind of ridiculous when you really think about it. Or even, at one point people was doing that last Christmas, right? When they wanted to get their kids the PlayStation 5, people was paying way over the price. So it's like during COVID, we just had some decisions that, a lot of us were making that didn't really make sense, man. And I think real estate was one of them. And because you were overpaying, you had to actually put that money up in cash.
mm,
And that's something that a lot of the first time home buyers that I talk to, they're not really understanding that part of it. It's like, well, okay, well, yeah, the interest rates were lower last year, but you using the down payment assistance program, or you barely got the 5% or the 3.5% FHA money right now that you need. You actually don't even got your closing costs. I'm paying you your closing costs
mm,
for you. Me and Ken working the deal to get you your closing costs. All you got is your minimum down payment. So you wouldn't have been able to buy a house in that market anyway,
mm,
because you had to put an extra $50,000 down. That had to be cash money. You don't have that. So the opportunity to buy during that market wasn't even an option for you. Like let's really sit here and say it and be realistic. That wasn't an option for you. You don't have that type of money. You know what I mean? And a lot of us don't have that type of money. I mean, I think even if you had that type of money, it could kind of get to the point of it's ridiculous to have to do that. And even some of the homes that I secured during that time, it's like if you were able to get it at appraised value, that was because it was a fixer upper, and you needed to dump 30 to 50,000 into remodeling the property. So it's a lot to consider, man. It's definitely a lot to consider in that market. Ken, I know in San Diego, man, you guys were looking at it, and it was crazy out there, right?
Man, it was the wild wild west. I'll be honest with you, man. I mean, I'll give you a personal example myself. My wife and I, we were looking for a property, and when I tell you we were out looking for a property with again the family that we have, we want to be able to make sure that we're able to have enough space, to house our family. We go out looking for a few properties here, and we were getting outbid $100,000, $80,000. And anybody knows me, man. I'm an investor first, man. The numbers matter to me. So it just did not make sense in any way, shape, form, or fashion to go ahead and try to compete with cash buyers that are bidding over $100,000 or $50,000. I don't want the house that bad. I don't want it that bad. There is not a bone in my body to say, oh, go try to compete with. There's the numbers matter. Okay, you don't run into wealth unintentionally, right? This stuff is intentional. So I'm going to intentionally not purchase this house and settle down and wait until it's the right time to buy. Because again, like we said before, the price matters, right? Price matters, entry points matter, and we always have to consider when to enter the market. So at that point in time, my family, I can sit back and wait. And when it's time to buy, it's time to buy. And when it's not, it's not. But we can utilize those funds to go ahead and, do other things in our lives. So it's just crazy. I would be remiss to come on here and tell you guys that was a great market to buy. The only great thing about it was the interest rates. Okay, I'm not saying that if you purchase in that time frame that you got shafted or anything of that nature, because I definitely wouldn't say that, because there was, again, here in the San Diego market, let me tell you this: it does nothing to go. It's going to continue to go up. Okay, so getting in is great. You have to get in, and if you got in at a 2.5 interest rate, that's amazing. That's awesome. I would advise you to never refinance, never move that interest rate, and continuously to have that home in your portfolio for the rest of your life until the principal is paid down. But what I will say is, now when you are actually shopping in a serious nature and you want to purchase, now is the time to get in, just due to the fact, the competition. It's not so much competition. Okay. You can go to a new home build and even go to a new home build and get a lower interest rate there, because they're trying to have promotions to be able to get you lower interest rates to get into the property that you want. Because at the end of the day, building isn't going to stop. Okay. It's just not at a rapid rate as it once was, but it's not going to stop. So now they still have to fill these homes. People are scared to buy. So now it's an opportune time for you to go ahead and, mosey on in there and see what they got. Because guess what? The power is within you. Okay. So again, crunch the numbers, sit down, understand that this is not an emotional purchase. Okay. Because I think a lot of loan officers and sometimes realtors tend to forget the emotional component of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
It becomes discouraging, not getting offers accepted, still running around every other weekend or every week, looking at this house, looking at that house. There's an emotional component there beyond anything, right? If you can envision your family playing in that living room or that backyard, there's an emotional component that's gonna tag along with your money, and you're gonna be almost willing to do anything to get a home if you want it bad enough. But trust me, remove that, put yourself in position to be able to crunch the numbers, look at it black and white, and actually make sure that you're making a sound decision for you and your family, not making an emotional decision based on if you want that home. Really crunch the numbers. You got to think like an investor when going down these roads, whether if it's 2021, 22, 23, 24, and I'm moving on. Okay. Because at the end of the day, your financial success, it's within you. You're the responsible person. You're the responsibility of that. All right.
Absolutely. No, that's great. And then you brought up a good point, man, because it's really like playing musical chairs last year. But because again, if you got a great interest rate and you got in maybe a whole entire year ago, right? You were good, but if you were getting in at the tail end of that and you were still paying above market value for a property when it hit like 2022 in April, May, and some markets even into June, now you just paid $100,000 over and then the market just crashed, right? So now, yeah, you have a low interest rate, but now you're underwater, right? So if you got in again anytime in 2021, I think you should be fine. But depending on when you got in 2022, if you got in that first half of the year, you might be in a situation where you could technically be underwater a little bit for a period of time until the market corrects. But I would even say because that interest rate is so low, you still have such a good payment that, yeah, you can't sell the house and make any money, right? Because maybe you paid $400,000 for the house and technically it only could sell for $350,000, right? But your payment is so low, even if you bought it at $350,000 right now, your payment wouldn't be right about the same or a little bit more. So you're still in a good position. So that's why everything is so nuanced to look at.
That's a great position to be in. I mean, just think about adding again a couple $100 extra a month to go ahead and pay down that principal with a 2% interest rate over time. We can really crunch the numbers and see what you'll be when your principal to be too low enough where you can go ahead and refinance or take a HELOC out to go ahead and get that same 50,000, but keep that same interest rate that you were going to have regardless. So it's all subjective, right? It's all subjective. It's all about critical thinking. It's all about the knowledge that you have. It's all about the people that you're working with. Make sure you're working with knowledgeable people to put you in position of power. All right. So, and again, what I will, and I got a moment of transparency as well. You were talking about 2022, 2021. Listen, think about it, 2020, man. When COVID first hit, that same property that I was just that I wanted to move in, it ballooned up to $830,000. When 2020, it was 610.
Right.
It was 610. Think about that.
Yeah.
Think about that for a moment. In 2 years. So think about if I was able to get in during that pullback there. Do not be fearful. Do not be fearful. I just seen the statistic is saying that we're coming on as a human race going over 8 billion people. People are still having kids. Guess what? Those kids are going to need somewhere to live, and those kids are going to have kids, and they're going to need somewhere to live. We're not getting to Mars fast enough to colonize Mars yet.
Absolutely. Yep. So yeah, and what we have to do, man, is make apples to apples comparisons, right? So
Yeah.
we're looking at this. It's like the only problem with buying in 2022 and possibly 2023 is that you're gonna have a higher interest rate. But again, as we alluded to, it's a lot less competition. You're paying a less of a list price, and you need less upfront cost. So when we're talking about the less upfront cost, I did a comparison here versus 2021 and 2022. I really want you to pay attention to. Let's say the house is listed for $300,000, right? Now, in 2021, you paying $50,000 over for that property. Yeah, you getting maybe a 3.75 interest rate as the example here. Well, now, even though you only planned on putting about 5% down, now since you're paying over, you need 72 racks to bring the closing. Do you have that? I don't know. So, let's talk about that. But now for that $300,000 list home, you're like, man, it's about 9,500 homes on the market in Vegas. I'm not about to pay you $300,000 for that home. However, we split this up between you paying some of my closing costs, taking money off the price, buying down the interest rate, I want to pay about 275 for that house. Okay, all right. Well then, yeah, the interest rate 6.75%. But now we do the numbers, and now you only bring in $21,000 to close, which you could use one of them down payment programs we mentioned. They got about 20,000 for you. Okay,
So you're saying $50,000 less as you bring it to the table.
$50,000 less to close.
Incredible. But the faster you get in, the faster you'll be able to accumulate that extra 50K. That again, I'm sorry, that 20K that you can go ahead and put in, and now you're going to be in position of power to negotiate. Negotiation is everything right now.
Absolutely. And then see, everybody's looking at the interest rate, but then now let's look at the fact of what that payment is. Like, yeah, is your payment more? Absolutely, it is more. About, almost $400 more, right? But let's be real. A lot of us spend $400 a month eating out and doing different things like that. But over the course of a 10-year time period, when we crunch these numbers, the cost actually is less buying the house now than it was before. So it's like you didn't really miss out on much. So if you bought before, great. In this scenario, you had the extra cash to put down, or you got a really good deal there, and that's what your 10-year cost is. But they're only
Mhm.
about you $6,000 different, which if you're able to finesse it now over a 10-year period, you're paying less. And that's not even to really compensate for the fact that you can refinance and thinking about all those different options, because most people don't pay their same interest rate over the 30-year life of the loan.
They don't.
At some point, whether it's 2 years, 5 years, 7 years from now, you're going to be able to refinance that property. And another thing is, if you're in Las Vegas, you're only going to stay in that property for about 7 years until you sell it or turn it into a rental. That's the average amount of time that people stay in a property here. San Diego, Southern California, a little different because of the pricing and the weather and all kind of other things. They pick a house and they there 15 years plus on average. But
And when you say that, there is a caveat, right? When we're talking about that staying in homes, we also got to think about our military family, right? A lot of those military family are PCSing every few years. A lot of times that's the objection to not buying. But if you go ahead and take a look at the chart that Mr. Jones has go ahead and put up, he's already shown you what 5 years ago it'll go ahead will pay you out in appreciation, right? So if you're there for that 3 year time frame or that 5 year time frame, and then you're PCSing, and what I mean by permanent change of duty station, okay, so going somewhere else to relocate because the military needs you to, guess what? You've actually going to be able to sell your property and be able to recoup that $82,000 that you and your family can then go put into another home. And now that same interest rate that you worry about, you've already have a down payment to go ahead and combat that interest rate.
bam,
Okay.
yeah, it gets you right back to this chart. Now that's a very good segue right back to what would you rather do for that 5-year period, man. And as you can see, that's a phenomenal example, man. I really appreciate that. A good level of insight, especially for our veterans on Veterans Day. It's like, let's get you into some property, man. Like, we don't want any type of barriers for making you and your family feel comfortable and safe in the home that you guys live in.
At the end of the day, listen, veterans, you guys have fought for this country, okay? And now it is time for you to have home ownership to own a piece of this country. All right? Take the time. Take the time. Sit down with your wife, your significant other, and figure out how you can get to home ownership in the fastest traceable means. And if you need a little assistance, please give Mr. Jones here a call, myself a call, and we'll go ahead and we would be more than happy to assist.
Man, that was a great real estate conversation, dropping a lot of gems and a lot of knowledge, man. You probably gonna have to watch this more than once to really pick up on everything, man. So
Yes,
definitely,
sir.
but also our contact information is below, so you can definitely contact me everything real estate. Even if you're not in the Las Vegas market, I can definitely connect you with someone in San Diego, of course, and also in other places in California and throughout the country, because I am well connected in this industry. But we definitely want to spend the remaining time here today, especially we got veteran Kenneth Davis here, and talk a little bit more about the veteran issues going into 2023 and some different things that are some phenomenal changes, man. So, Mr. Davis, man, what's going on in that space for him?
Well, man, I mean, at the end of the day, this is a Veterans Day conversation, right? We want to make sure that the veterans get the information. So typically we don't do this too often by breaking down some real insightful knowledge that's going to be able to assist, because different laws change on a regular basis that most aren't privy to. So we want to go ahead and provide you some of the great information that's going to be able to assist. One great thing that happened that transpired is one, a cost of living adjustment, right? So I do want to go ahead and tell veterans that veterans, you guys are granted a cost of living adjustment every single year. Typically, it coincides with the Social Security disability as well. So anytime that the Social Security goes up, you can kind of guarantee that the veterans disability goes up as well. When we're talking about this cost of living adjustment, currently, if you can look on the screen here, it's projected to say 8.9%, but it actually resonated to about 8.7%. Okay, that transpired October 13th. Okay, October 13th, that's when it was actually finalized. And I'm going to tell you that this goes up every single year, but this one in particular, this is the highest grossing increase over 40 years. Okay, over 40 years. So you're actually going to see that it takes effect in December 2022. But if you know anything about the Department of Veterans Affairs benefits, they work on something called omnibus, right? So it's actually going to be paid out paid out January 1st, 2023. So you will be seeing that increase there on the new year, right? So you can kind of put yourself in position of giving yourself a little bit of raise that year. So that's amazing there. I'm sorry, I actually said a little, but that's a pretty tremendous raise there. So if you want to kind of technically break it down, right, it's 8.7%. So for every $1,000, you can be banking on receiving $87, right? So for every $1,000, you can kind of break it down to receive $87. So that's an amazing increase. I think, again, veterans, you veterans out there, if you are receiving your disability benefits, you will be, I mean, really ecstatic that's going to be able to happen to you. Definitely for some of the veterans who are in position where you can't be able to work and be in the workforce due to some of the service connected disabilities, because those disabilities are really deliberating for some, and it almost confined to their homes and different things of that nature. So having a little extra income based on the cost of living adjustment is a tremendous ordeal. And I will tell you right now, I would tell you right now, with that disability increase, it's kind of combating inflation, right? Obviously the increases are going to be based on the cost of living throughout year to year of inflation. We understand that inflation has been running rampant this year, and the government is trying to combat it as much as possible. But overall, it has been really, kicking a lot of people's butts. Active duty members have actually received a BAH increase, a basic allowance for housing. So that's incredible as well. So at any point in time when you guys are ready for active duty, that means buy a house. Okay. That does not mean go rent a house. That means buy a house. Okay. That's what BAH stands for. All right. So do not confuse that. All right. So with that increase there, you can go ahead and utilize those funds there to go ahead and make sure you transition that to purchase yourself a home. But for you veterans who are receiving VA disability benefits, that increase will be taking effect January 1st, 2023. Okay. They typically go off something called the CPI index. This is again, obviously the consumer pricing index, where obviously wage earners, they go ahead and check again based on inflation. That's what they're looking at. So this year it was relatively high. So with that being said, you were able to go ahead and get that increase to 8.7%, which essentially is, I'm going to go ahead and, essentially going to go over to tell you about some of the pricing, right? Some of the actual the benefits and what they actually determine. All right.
For sure. For sure. But yeah, but before you get right into that, I
Mhm.
want to acknowledge, man, how phenomenal it is that they're actually keeping up with inflation. So think about that from a practical sense of your regular job, right? Like if you're working, a regular job, your uh, employer is not giving you a cost of living increase that high every year, right? So that is
Or
amazing with
ever.
the government or ever, right? Yeah, like literally, I know when I was employed in some different workplaces, they would have these assessments that you would do at the end of the year, right? And it's like, okay, grade yourself on, you got to grade yourself on your performance matrix, and you might qualify for like 1 or 2% increase, right? So it's like,
If that.
yeah, if that. So it's like you got to fight and write a whole essay just to get 1%, and you guys are getting over 8%, man, to keep up with the cost of living because you know for a hamburger or gas, anything going to the grocery store, everything costs more, about
Yeah.
8% more on average, and that's why you got that 8%, man. So it's very phenomenal what our government is able to do, especially thinking about our veterans and thinking about people on disability benefits as a whole to make sure that they could actually afford their basic needs. So that's great. That's
Yeah, because
phenomenal.
I will say, though basic needs are really increasing here, we must take an effect and then also put in our mindset that this is a lifelong benefit and it's tax free. So, with that tax free benefit being applied to your everyday life, you want to make sure that you're utilizing it correctly. So, by being able to use that extra income to even fight some of the interest rate increases, right? But however, we are going to be able to combat that. That's what we want to do. So, if that cost of living adjustment can be applied to the home ownership that you and your family may need, and kind of tandemly using your VA home loan with this, it'll be amazing because the funding fee is going to be waived if you're receiving disability because you only need to be 10%. Again, 10% disabled to be able to receive a waiver of that VA home loan funding fee.
No, that's
So
great. That's great.
that's incredible.
And I had a question for you. So now it increased over 8% for 2023. Now, based on inflation and that sort of thing. So if
Mhm.
inflation ever goes negative, or let's say you move to a different area or different things like that, would they ever reduce your allotment back to what it was before or lower?
So I'm gonna ask that I'm gonna answer that question with the question. You think the how do you think bipartisanship or the right wing or the left wing would react to that? So it's not something that typically happens, right? It's not something that typically happens because a lot of Congress would be up in uproar if they're not taking care of the veteran community. Because at the end of the day, government is kind of forewarned us that's something that they're willing to do, to bend over backwards for our veterans because at the end of the day they're the ones who protect this country on a day-to-day basis. When you go out to go to your grocery store and you feel safe, it's because of them. So this is not something that is pretty much reduced. It's more or less it's something that it will be remain the same or increase.
Okay, no, that's great. That's great. So, like the young people say, is it's up and it's stuck, right? So it ain't going down. So,
Oh
and,
man.
and absolutely. So let's get into how this actually looks and translates, right, from a standpoint of what your checks look like, and how that's going to work. So, Mr. Davis, if you want to go into kind of explaining this chart here, that it's really great how you guys broke it down for veterans, because I've actually seen this information online, and I kind of work a little bit to try to help service veterans, and I was looking on the website and they have this information there, but it's like so all over the place a little bit where you have to look at a bunch of different pages to get this information, and it's great what your organization did with getting this sheet here to make it so concise to really just understand, okay, if you're this percentage, if you got the kids, all this, like, and give it a one pager to understand that. So that this is a really good breakdown you're going into here.
For sure, for sure. So it's just so many different applicable things that you can, determine your payment. However, at the end of the day, we want to make it as simplistic as possible, right? So obviously, you can see there at 30%. With that 30%, if you have one child, it's gonna be 504. That's just basic, right? It's a basic chart that you receive what you can receive, and as you can see, each coinciding percentage will increase over time. I mean, increase as your disability increases. So wherever you fall on that disability chart, that's where you would be falling into your monthly benefit. Your monthly benefit will be distributed to you every first of the month. Again, obviously, it's one of those, if it's a holiday, if it's not a holiday, but typically it'll be on the first of the month or the last day of the presiding month, where you'll be receiving direct deposit of your payments. And if you're receiving a physical check, again, they're going to be obviously mailing your checks out. But 9 times out of 10, most people are transitioning, which is again the Department of Treasury and Department of Veterans Affairs is also transitioning over where they're trying to make sure all payments are direct deposited, right? So that's kind of a push for that. Even if you get a prepaid card, to make sure that direct deposit is hitting your account. So as you can see, as you go up, as you continue to increase over time. So 40%, 722, 50%, 1020, 60%, 1288, and so on and so forth. 70%, 1615, 80%, 1877. 90%, 2109, 100%, 3456. But with these payments, these are determined on disabilities, right? So obviously, I know it all sounds fine and dandy, and so it all sounds cool in regards to being able to receive this extra income. But you have to realize a lot of these payments are attached to disabilities. Okay, so I want to make sure everyone understands that a lot of these veterans are dealing with certain issues or ailments that are putting them in position to be able to receive these payments because they have sacrificed their lives, and we must take honor to them on this Veterans Day.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now going on the chart, and you maybe most veterans will understand this already, but I want to make sure that for the people that don't, they understand the illustrations there, because you talked about that first column, which it
Yeah.
looks like it illustrated like a veteran and then a child. So would it be different in that first column if you didn't have a child, or how would that work?
Yes. So, so each coinciding child under the age of 18, and that's what the first illustration is presenting, a veteran and child. Okay, a veteran and child. Second one is veteran, spouse, and child. Okay. Third one, veteran, spouse, child, and also parent. So you are also able to receive benefits for a dependent parent. Okay, and now the other column, the fourth column, veteran, spouse, parent, child, and dependent, two dependent parents, right? And it continues to represent veteran, dependent parent, child, veteran, two dependent parents, and child. So with that, it also provides you the additional income. If again you do not fall in that any categories of that chart, you can go ahead and place yourself where you would be on that actual chart. So if you are a veteran with two children, so you can go to again 30% at with a veteran and one child, you'll see 504. If you go ahead and go down a bit at the bottom of the chart, where again at 30%, you can go ahead and add under age of 18 additional $27.
Okay.
Okay, so but that will continue to increase as you can see with each coinciding percentage.
Absolutely, absolutely. And now for the children over 18.
With
Um
children over, yeah. Mhm.
so for that one, how and to what age can you claim a child? Is there a certain age limit on that?
Yes, the age limit is 24 years old, 24 years of age, which is actually, pretty, pretty extensive, right? Over the age of 18, you have up to 24 years old as long as they're a school child. And when I mean a school child, they're in college or trade school. Just because you're in college or trade school, you can even be married to be able to receive that benefit as well. So just because you're married and you are a school age child, you still be able to receive that benefit as a veteran. So with that being said, your school age child can go all the way up until 24, but I've even seen extensions all the way to 26.
Okay.
So it's all dependent upon, your circumstance. But again, I would always advise with, again, a subject matter expert, which you can always give us a call. We can kind of break down your circumstance on how you will be compensated.
No, absolutely. No, this is amazing information. And definitely contact Veterans for Veterans. If you're on your phone, you enter the website. But if you're actually looking at this on a TV screen and you got your phone handy, you can actually scan that QR code there, get you directly to the website. You can schedule a consultation, and you might be lucky enough to actually have that consultation with Mr. Kenneth Davis himself, right? And so that, is an amazing thing. I've actually sat through and saw some of the plans that he has and what he speaks about during those consultations. You're going to leave with a wealth of knowledge, not only about the service connected disability benefits, but about all the benefits that you can actually qualify for as a veteran with voc rehab programs and a lot of different things that we're not going to tell you about in depth right now because it'll take a long time. And plus, we want to talk to you individually. Go ahead and set up that consultation.
And I will tell you, veterans, listen, at any point in time that you feel as though that you may not be eligible or able to receive anything, just give us a call. Okay, let's make it. Let's go ahead and try to come to a consensus or determination together. Okay, because at the end of the day, we're trying to be able to access any benefits. Okay, whether if it's healthcare, whether if it's education benefits, whether if it's compensation benefits, again, care benefits. There's so many different benefits that's allotted to you, and these benefits are not welfare. They're an exclusive benefit for the veteran who actually served this country. So on this Veterans Day, at any point in time that you feel that way, you give us a call, text, anything. We want to make sure that we're servicing you. Okay.
Man, great information for the veterans today. Great information overall. Real estate, really giving you guys a lot of gems today. Definitely check in with us. Our contact information is below. But as Veterans Day, man, it's still daytime outside. We went to work for you guys today because you absolutely deserve it as veterans. Again, happy Veterans Day to you, Kenneth, and thank you for your service. What do you have planned today with you and your family, man? I know your wonderful wife probably got some great surprises for you today.
Man, you know what? I think today, man, probably just go ahead and take advantage of all the discounts and food that's going to be offered to us. But go to one or two places and just be able to spend time and enjoyment with the family. That's it. Not too much.
Definitely, definitely. You deserve that, man. You served well, and you're still doing wonderful things for veterans with the Veterans for Veterans Consultant Agency. So definitely appreciate that, man. Thank everyone for watching. Prepare to Compete podcast. Thank all the veterans again for their service. And, continue to watch, continue to learn and grow. We're very excited to be able to officially go live on this podcast on Veterans Day. We'll actually have some other content that you could check out on the page as well that we filmed prior to Veterans Day, talking about some other issues. So you have a lot of topics to get caught up on, but we wanted to make this podcast very special for you guys and go live on Veterans Day because, that's something that we're very focused on serving our military and veteran service members, whether it's from an education standpoint with real estate and also, of course, disability benefits, but anything that we can do to help and impact the veteran community at large, we're very happy to work and educate our service members. So thanks again. Kenneth, do you have any last words for them?
Man, thank you, veterans. That's it. Just thank you. Thank you for all the sacrifices that you have made. Thank you for being away from your family. Thank you for protecting this country. And just an overall thank you, because without you guys, we wouldn't be one of the greatest nations in the world.
Absolutely. Thanks again. We out. Prepare to compete.
Fair to compete. Let's
Peace.
go.